Have you ever been judged? Not for what you've done, but for what you look like. Imagine standing at an airport gate, holding a first-class ticket you worked your whole life to afford, only to be told, "People like you don't belong here." No explanation, no apology, just humiliation, handed to you in front of strangers. What would you do? Would you walk away quietly, swallowing the pain, or would you stand firm, risking everything to prove your dignity cannot be denied? This is not just one man's story. It is a mirror held up to all of us. Because if it can happen to a black CEO with power, wealth, and influence, what does that say about the rest of us who felt invisible, unheard, or unwanted? Close your eyes for a moment. If you were in his shoes, standing at that gate, with the world watching, what choice would you make tonight? We step into a story of courage, betrayal, and justice. A story where one call changed everything. Stay with me, because what happens next may just change the way you see power, dignity, and yourself. If this resonates, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so you never miss stories that matter. The late afternoon sun spilled golden light across the wide windows of Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. The place had that Friday energy, half tired, half electric. Families dragging roller bags. Business travelers with eyes glued to their phones. The smell of pretzels, coffee, and jet fuel blending in the air. Among them walked Jordan Maxwell, 47 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a plain navy polo and jeans. No entourage, no suit, no flash. To anyone watching, he looked like just another passenger trying to get home. But Jordan wasn't just another passenger. He was the founder and CEO of Maxwell Dynamics, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. His systems quietly powered airport logistics in more than half of the United States. He had once lectured at MIT, solving equations that most people wouldn't even attempt. Yet here, in the long corridor of Gate C-21, none of that mattered. Jordan liked it that way. He believed the best way to see how a system truly worked was to walk through it anonymously, without the armor of titles or reputation. It was a habit he had kept since his teaching days, a habit of testing the world, quietly. He approached the first-class boarding lane, ticket in hand. The agent, a woman in her late 40s with sharp glasses and sharper eyes, glanced up. Her badge read Linda Carver. Jordan smiled politely. "Good afternoon. Boarding pass for 3A. Linda looked at the paper, then at him, her lips pressed thin. "I'm going to need some additional verification," she said flatly. Jordan blinked. "Excuse me." She leaned closer across the counter. "Sir, this pass doesn't look right. Did you purchase this yourself?" The words landed heavy, carrying a tone Jordan knew too well. He had heard variations of it since he was a teenager on city buses, since his early days pitching investors who couldn't believe someone who looked like him had built a company worth billions. "Yes," he answered evenly. "It was purchased through the corporate account. You can scan the barcode." Linda didn't move. She glanced at the growing line behind him, then back at Jordan. "I'll have to call security," she said, already reaching for the phone. Murmurs rippled behind him. A man in a suit whispered to his companion. He probably snuck into first class. A young woman shook her head and looked away. Jordan felt the familiar heat rise in his chest, the sting of humiliation, the urge to shout. But he had trained himself, over years and years, to master that fire, to let silence do the work anger wanted to do. 2 security officers arrived within moments. They didn't ask questions. They simply flanked him. "Sir, we'll need you to step aside." Jordan looked at them calmly, then at Linda. "I see," he said softly. "You're certain you want to go down this road?" Linda folded her arms. "Rules are rules." Jordan exhaled through his nose, slow and steady. For a moment, he thought of his father, a bus driver who once told him, "They'll test your dignity, son, every day. Don't give it away cheap." So Jordan nodded. He picked up his small carry-on and walked quietly away from the gate. The whispers followed him, the kind that mixed judgment with curiosity. When he reached the far corner of the terminal, he pulled out his phone. One number, a call that very few people on Earth even knew how to make. The line clicked. A woman's voice, crisp and steady, answered immediately. "Naomi Blake, head of global security at Maxwell Dynamics." Jordan spoke only 3 words. "Raven Protocol. Begin." There was a pause, not of confusion, but of understanding. Naomi replied, "Understood." He ended the call. No drama, no raised voice, no threats. Jordan leaned against the cool glass wall, watching a plane taxi slowly into the Texas sunset. From the outside, he looked like just another traveler delayed on a Friday evening. But beneath that calm exterior, something enormous had just shifted. Because Jordan Maxwell wasn't walking away defeated. He was setting into motion a chain of events that would shake one of the largest airlines in America to its core. And the people who had laughed, whispered, and judged him at Gate C-21, they were about to learn who he really was. The walk away from Gate C-21 felt longer than it should have. Every step Jordan Maxwell took was followed by invisible eyes, whispers from strangers who had already written a story about him. He could almost hear the unspoken verdict in their voices. "He doesn't belong here." He moved past a row of chairs where a young mother hushed her child, past a newsstand where a man in a blazer pretended to scan a magazine, but kept glancing sideways. Jordan had lived enough years to know what those stares meant. Suspicion, pity, condescension, all wrapped into one. He stopped near a small cafe tucked between gates. The smell of burnt coffee and cinnamon rolls drifted out. Jordan set his carry-on down, pulled out his phone, and opened a blank note. His fingers hovered over the screen. For a fleeting moment, he considered typing an angry post. He imagined the headline, "Black CEO denied boarding despite valid ticket." It would go viral in seconds. People would rally. Hashtags would trend. But that wasn't his way. He had learned long ago that outrage burned hot but faded quickly, leaving nothing but ash. He didn't want sympathy. He wanted change. Jordan sipped water from a paper cup and closed his eyes. His chest tightened as he replayed Linda Carver's voice. "Did you purchase this yourself?" The way she said it, sharp, almost mocking, had stripped him of years of accomplishment in a second. In her eyes, he wasn't a CEO, a mathematician, or an innovator. He was simply a black man she could question without consequence. The security officers had stood stiffly at his side, uniforms pressed, eyes empty of curiosity. Not once did they ask to scan his boarding pass. They just escorted him away, their silence louder than any accusation. Jordan felt a familiar heaviness, the kind he used to carry as a boy riding buses in the South. He thought of his father again, sitting behind the wheel of city routes, enduring daily slights from passengers who never saw his dignity. Jordan pulled out a small leather notebook he always kept in his bag. Inside were scribbles of equations, fragments of poetry, and reminders of promises he made to himself. On the very first page, written in his father's hand, was one sentence, "Never let them shrink you." He ran his finger across those words. Then he lifted his head and watched the bustle of the terminal. Travelers rushing, announcements blaring, screens flashing departure times. All of it was familiar, Yet beneath the surface, he could feel something else. The quiet rhythm of a system about to be exposed. His phone buzzed. A text from Naomi Blake. Understood. Initializing Raven. That was enough. He put the notebook back in his bag, stood tall, and walked to a quieter section of the concourse. At the far end, he found an empty row of seats overlooking the runway. Outside, planes lined up like metallic birds, wings catching the fading light. Jordan watched one lift into the sky, its engines roaring. He felt the vibration in his chest, a reminder of power disguised as grace. A teenager nearby scrolled on his phone. Jordan caught the reflection of his own face on the glass calm. Unreadable. People often mistook his quiet for weakness. They had no idea that his calm was the sharpest weapon he owned. He leaned back and let the silence settle. Around him, voices rose and fell like waves. But his mind drifted inward. He remembered the first time he flew first class, years ago. He had been 29, nervous and proud, clutching a single briefcase with the prototype of his logistics software. The flight attendant that day had looked surprised when he walked into the cabin, but she had forced a smile and offered champagne. Jordan hadn't cared about the awkwardness. He was too busy memorizing every detail, determined to turn that prototype into something the world would need. Now, decades later, his systems kept flights on schedule and baggage moving across continents. Ironically, the very infrastructure Linda Carver relied on to manage boarding had been coded by his teams. He almost laughed at the irony. She had denied the man who had built the foundation under her feet. Jordan inhaled deeply, then exhaled slow. The humiliation was real, but it would not define him. He could feel the anger pressing against the walls of his ribs, demanding release, but he refused to hand his dignity to those who thrived on taking it. Instead, he whispered to himself, patience, precision, purpose. 3 words he had repeated during every crisis, from investor betrayals to failed launches. They were his compass. A group of college students nearby burst out laughing, one of them pointing at a phone screen. Jordan glanced over and caught a glimpse shaky footage of him at the gate, standing before Linda Carver as she blocked him. Someone had already posted the encounter. The caption read, "This guy thought he could sneak into first class. Watch what happens." Jordan's stomach tightened. The narrative had already begun false, cruel, careless. He could almost feel strangers across the internet judging him, sharing the clip with smug commentary. He closed his eyes, took another breath, and let the sting settle. They don't know me, he thought, but they will. Moments later, his phone buzzed again. This time it was a secure message from Naomi Phase 1. Contact established with Delgado. We'll brief soon. Jordan allowed a small smile to touch his lips. Robert Delgado, the veteran supervisor, was a man he had once met at an industry security panel. Quiet, skeptical, but not corrupt. Jordan remembered their brief handshake, the way Delgado had said, "Sometimes silence is complicity." That memory now resurfaced like a promise. Jordan straightened in his seat. He no longer felt the sting of humiliation as deeply. In its place came resolve. What Linda Carver thought was a simple denial of boarding had become a spark. She had unwittingly lit the fuse to something far larger than herself. The next chapter wouldn't be about one gate agent or one boarding pass. It would be about a culture, a company, and a system that had been left unchecked for too long. Jordan looked out the window once more, watching as the next jet accelerated down the runway. He imagined the roar of its engines as a kind of drumbeat, not of war, but of reckoning. He whispered, almost to himself, "Let's begin." The Texas sky outside the glass darkened into deep orange. Jordan Maxwell sat still, his phone resting in his palm, its weight heavier than usual. One call had already set everything in motion, but silence was often the loudest moment before a storm. He watched the runway lights blink awake one by one, like quiet signals in the dusk. The phone vibrated, a secure line. He answered without hesitation. Jordan. The voice of Naomi Blake filled his ear, calm and precise. She was hundreds of miles away in Washington, but her tone carried the same steadiness she had once used in FBI field briefings. "I've initiated Raven," she reported. "We're activating the first layer now. Delgado agreed to meet. He's ready to talk, but he wants to know if you'll guarantee protection for his family." Jordan closed his eyes for a moment. He pictured Robert Delgado, a man with silver hair and eyes that carried 20 years of airport nights. He remembered the single conversation they had shared years ago about silence and complicity. "Yes," Jordan said. "We'll protect them. Tell him he won't stand alone this time." There was a pause. Then Naomi added, "We also have eyes on a young intern named Caleb Turner. He was at your gate. He recorded the incident. His video is already picking up traction online. 6,000 views in the first hour. If this grows, we can harness it. But he might also become a target." Jordan's brow furrowed. "Does he know what he's holding?" "Not fully. He's just a kid with a phone. But the internet is watching, and the wrong people at Regalis will move fast to crush him." Jordan felt a protective weight in his chest. He thought of himself at that age, carrying ideas larger than his body, yet never being taken seriously. Caleb Turner didn't yet know the size of the wave he had unleashed. "Keep him close," Jordan instructed. "If he's brave enough to press upload, then he's already part of this story." Naomi's tone softened. "Jordan, this is bigger than one video. You know, once we go forward, there's no walking back." Jordan leaned forward, resting his elbow on his knee. His reflection in the glass stared back calm, composed, but inside, a battle waged. Part of him longed to shut it all down, to avoid the weight of another fight. He had fought enough battles in boardrooms, against investors who doubted him, regulators who slowed him, competitors who stole his work. Each war left scars invisible to the public. Did he really want to open another? His mind pulled him back to the humiliation at the gate, Linda Carver's words, the judgment in strangers' eyes. For a second, he had felt smaller, reduced to a stereotype, and he realized this wasn't just about him. It was about every person who had been dismissed, doubted, or degraded in the same way. His father's words whispered back, "Don't give away your dignity. Cheap." Jordan straightened. "Naomi, move forward. Secure Delgado, shield Caleb. Gather every piece of proof you can find." Her reply carried no hesitation. "Understood. Raven Phase 2 is live." The call ended. Jordan slid the phone back into his pocket, the weight now feeling like resolve rather than burden. Behind him, the TV mounted on the cafe wall flickered with news. A reporter's voice spilled through the terminal. "Tonight, Regalis Airways faces growing backlash after a viral video appears to show a passenger denied first-class boarding." The clip rolled across the screen, Caleb's shaky footage of Jordan at the gate, Linda's dismissive tone, security at his side. Travelers began to gather around the screen, murmuring. Some frowned, others shook their heads. The story was no longer confined to whispers at Gate C-21. It was traveling outward, like ripples on water. Jordan watched silently. He had always believed in data, in systems, in the unseen forces that move beneath the surface. Now, he was watching in real time as humiliation transformed into momentum. His phone buzzed again. A text from Naomi. "One more thing. Richard Hawthorne is aware." Jordan's lips tightened. Richard Hawthorne, CEO of Regalis Airways, was a man whose empire had thrived on arrogance and concealment. He had seen him across conference tables, the kind of executive who smirked through policy meetings and treated compliance as a nuisance. If Hawthorne knew, then the game had escalated. Jordan's thoughts flickered. He imagined Hawthorne in his office, glass of whiskey in hand, barking orders to silence the problem. He would call his fixer, the ruthless Victor Kane, to sweep it all under the rug. He always did. Jordan rubbed his temples. He could almost hear the voices of doubt friends, colleagues, even his own fears. Why fight this? You've built enough. You've earned enough. Walk away. But then he thought of Caleb, a 22-year-old who had risked ridicule to post the truth. He thought of Delgado, weary from years of silence, finally ready to step forward. He thought of his father's hand on his shoulder decades ago, steady, guiding him through storms. And he knew this wasn't about walking away. This was about walking through. He rose from his seat, grabbed his bag, and began to walk down the concourse. His stride was steady, not hurried, not hesitant. Each step carried the quiet weight of decision. As he passed gate C-25, a child tugged at his mother's sleeve, pointing to the TV screen where his image froze mid-frame. The mother shushed the child and turned away quickly, but Jordan caught the look in her eyes, curiosity mingled with discomfort. He wondered how long it would take before people saw more than the clip, before they saw the truth. At the end of the hall, Jordan stopped by a wide window overlooking the tarmac. A plane lifted into the sky, engines roaring into twilight. He watched it climb higher, a silhouette against fading light. He whispered to himself, so soft no one else could hear, "You tried to shrink me. Now watch how big this gets." The night at Dallas-Fort Worth had turned into something larger than travel delays and boarding passes. It had become the opening note of a reckoning, and Jordan Maxwell, calm and steady, was prepared to conduct the storm. Caleb Turner sat cross-legged on the cold tile floor near an outlet, his phone plugged in and glowing in his hands. The video he had posted just 2 hours earlier was now racing past 50,000 views. Notifications flooded his screen faster than he could swipe. He had never gone viral before. He had never expected to. His chest thudded as he scrolled through the comments. Some were supportive. "This is unacceptable. Classic example on flying while black." But others stung. "Probably forged that ticket. He should have just sat in coach like everyone else." Caleb rubbed his forehead, wondering if he had made a mistake. He was just an intern at a small tech startup. He hadn't even finished paying off his college loans. Did he really want this kind of attention? Yet, when he closed his eyes, he saw the image replay again and again. Jordan Maxwell standing at the gate, boarding pass in hand, dignity intact, even as Linda Carver shut him down in front of everyone. Caleb knew what it felt like to be dismissed without cause. His own father had once been pulled out of a car by police for a routine stop that ended in bruises and apologies that never meant anything. That memory had lived in their family like a scar. A message flashed across his screen call from unknown number. Caleb hesitated, thumb hovering. Then he answered, "Caleb Turner." The voice was firm, but not unfriendly. "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Naomi Blake. I work with Jordan Maxwell." Caleb's heart skipped. Wait, the guy from the video. That's correct. He asked me to reach out. You may not realize it, but what you recorded tonight could change everything. We want to make sure you stay safe while this unfolds. Caleb laughed nervously. Safe. It's just a video. It's never just a video. Naomi said, it's proof. Proof people in power will try very hard to erase. Do you understand? Caleb swallowed. He thought of his father's bruises. He thought of the anger in the comments. Yes, I think I do. Good. Stay where you are. Someone will find you soon. The call ended, leaving Caleb staring at his reflection in the darkened phone screen. His hands trembled, but somewhere inside, a thread of courage tightened. Across town, in a quiet diner away from the airport, Robert Delgado slid into a booth. He looked older than his 56 years. His hands shook slightly as he stirred sugar into his coffee. Naomi sat across from him, a tablet open between them. You're certain you want to do this? She asked. Delgado exhaled, eyes fixed on the steam rising from his cup. For 20 years, I've watched things happen, bags left unchecked, reports altered, complaints ignored. I told myself it wasn't my job to fight it. But tonight, when I saw them escort that man out like a criminal without even scanning his ticket. His voice trailed off. Naomi nodded. You don't have to explain. I need to know what you can give us. Delgado reached into his jacket and slid over a flash drive. Internal memos, email chains, Hawthorne's signatures on documents that never should have been approved. You'll see the patterns. They target certain passengers again and again. And it's not just bias, it's a culture. Naomi tapped the tablet, scanning the files. Her jaw tightened. This is enough to light a fire. Are you ready for the blowback? Delgado's eyes glistened. My wife told me last week she's tired of me coming home with silence on my tongue. Maybe it's time I gave her something better than silence. Back at the airport, Caleb noticed a man in a gray suit approach. He had kind eyes and a calm manner. You, Caleb Turner? Yeah. Name's Marcus. I work with Ms. Blake. She asked me to bring you somewhere safer. Caleb hesitated. Am I in trouble? No, Marcus said, lowering his voice. But trouble might be looking for you. Let's move. As they walked, Caleb glanced around nervously. He half expected someone to grab his phone or accuse him of something. Instead, they passed families with strollers, business travelers rushing to gates, and airport staff pretending everything was normal. To them, it was just another Friday night. Only Caleb knew that beneath the polished floor and bright lights, a battle was unfolding. Meanwhile, high above the city in a glass tower office, Richard Hawthorne stood before a wall of screens. The CEO of Regalis Airways was a tall man with sharp features and an expression that rarely softened. Beside him, the fixer Victor Kane adjusted his tie, eyes scanning the same feeds. The video's gone viral, Hawthorne muttered. Why does every idiot with a phone think they're a journalist? Kane's lips curved in a cold smile. Don't worry. Videos disappear. Stories can be rewritten. You just need to decide how far you want me to go. Hawthorne slammed a fist on the table. This cannot touch me. Do you understand? That man, what's his name again? Jordan Maxwell, Kane replied smoothly. Founder of Maxwell Dynamics. Hawthorne scoffed. A tech upstart. Doesn't matter who he is. Make him disappear from the conversation. Discredit the kid who filmed it. And if Delgado so much as breathes to the press, bury him. Kane nodded, already drafting messages to his network of operatives. His specialty was making problems vanish by intimidation, by bribery, sometimes by worse. Hawthorne poured himself a drink, amber liquid swirling. This airline is mine. No one humiliates me and lives to brag about it. But far from that tower. Jordan Maxwell remained seated in the terminal, his calm exterior belying the storm gathering beneath. He knew Hawthorne would strike back. He knew Victor Kane's reputation. Yet he felt no fear, only focus. The humiliation at the gate had transformed into something larger. Caleb's courage, Delgado's conscience, Naomi's precision, all of them were threads weaving into a net. And soon, that net would catch the giant who thought himself untouchable. Jordan Maxwell had always believed in patience. He built his company brick by brick, through long nights of code and endless negotiations. But now, patience felt like a gamble he couldn't afford. He watched the news feed scroll across Naomi's tablet headlines about the viral video. Commentators split between outrage and dismissal. Some called it a misunderstanding. Others named it what it was: discrimination in plain view. Naomi leaned closer. We can't stay passive. Hawthorne will mobilize faster than most people realize. He has media contacts, lobbyists, even law enforcement in his pocket. We need to control the narrative before he buries us. Jordan tapped the table softly, a rhythm he used to calm his thoughts. Then we don't just play defense, we go on offense. Naomi's eyes narrowed. What do you have in mind? He didn't answer directly. Instead, he picked up his phone and dialed a number few people knew. On the other end, Evelyn Monroe's warm, gravelly voice answered, Jordan, I've been waiting for your call. Evelyn Monroe had once been the first black woman to chair an airline board. She retired years ago, disillusioned after decades of fighting silent wars in boardrooms. She mentored Jordan when he was still a professor, dreaming of technology that could change industries. They tried to stop me from boarding tonight, Jordan said plainly. And now, the world is watching. Evelyn's laugh was dry. Of course they did. Same playbook, new decade. The question is, do you plan to turn this into a skirmish or a campaign? Jordan's silence was answer enough. Good, Evelyn said. Then listen closely. You'll need allies in places you don't expect. Old contracts, buried files, people who left regardless because they couldn't stomach it. Find them, bring them forward, and whatever you do, keep your dignity. That's the one thing they can never take without your permission. As the call ended, Naomi studied Jordan's expression. She believes in you. Jordan smiled faintly. She always did, even when I didn't. Meanwhile, Caleb Turner found himself in a quiet hotel room arranged by Naomi's team. His phone buzzed constantly, but he resisted posting more. The weight of responsibility pressed heavy. He replayed Jordan's calm voice in his head, the way he never raised it, even as guards surrounded him. Caleb wondered if he could ever carry himself with such composure. Then came a knock. Caleb froze. Marcus opened the door cautiously. A man in a black jacket tried to push past him. Federal investigator, the man said, flashing a badge too quickly. We need to confiscate that phone. Marcus blocked the entry. Show me proper ID. The man smirked. Don't make this hard. Before the situation could escalate, Naomi herself appeared at the end of the hall, voice sharp. Step away from my people. The fake agent hesitated, then slipped into the stairwell, vanishing. Caleb clutched his phone tighter, realizing just how valuable and dangerous his video had become. In the corporate tower, Richard Hawthorne raged. Reports of the fake agent's failure landed on his desk. He hurled a glass across the room. Amateurs. If Kane can't silence a college kid, why am I paying him? Victor Kane remained calm, adjusting his cufflinks. because silencing is only one option. Sometimes discrediting works better. He placed a dossier on the desk: Caleb's school debts, his father's arrest record, a social media post from years ago, taken out of context. Hawthorne's lips curled. Perfect. Paint him as unstable, a liar chasing fame. By tomorrow, no one will care what he filmed. But while Hawthorne plotted, Robert Delgado sat alone in his kitchen, staring at the flash drive he had given Naomi. His wife entered quietly, setting a hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing," she whispered. "Did I?" Delgado muttered. "You don't understand." Hawthorne. He doesn't lose. He crushes. If they trace those files back to me, then let them, she said firmly. Better to fall with truth than stand with lies. Her conviction steadied him. He realized he had spent years trading conscience for comfort. Tonight, the trade ended. Back in Naomi's temporary command post, Jordan studied the files Delgado provided. Each memo was a piece of rot instructions to single out problem passengers, orders to cover up safety violations, spreadsheets showing suspicious payments funneled offshore. "This isn't just bias," Naomi said. "It's systemic corruption." Jordan leaned back, voice quiet but firm. "Then we'll treat it as such. Not a personal insult. Not even a single airline problem. This is about an industry that thinks dignity is optional. We'll expose them. Naomi, all of them." The clock ticked past midnight. Naomi's team worked in silence, uploading documents to secure servers, cross-referencing whistleblower accounts, preparing a release strategy. Caleb dozed in a chair, phone clutched like a lifeline. Delgado paced near the window, wrestling with fear, but anchored by determination. Jordan stepped outside for air. The Texas night was heavy with humidity, lights of the city glittering in the distance. He thought of his younger self lecturing classrooms, full of ideas about fairness and structure. He thought of Evelyn Monroe, fighting battles when the odds were even worse. He thought of his parents, who raised him with little but gave him everything that mattered: a belief in his own worth. He whispered into the dark, "Not as a CEO, but as a man. They will not erase us." Inside, Naomi's phone buzzed. A secure channel message lit up press, already sniffing around Hawthorne's finances. "We can tip them off sooner than planned." She showed it to Jordan when he re-entered. His reply was simple: "Do it." And with that, the first thread in Hawthorne's empire began to unravel. Morning light crept through the blinds of the safe house, but sleep had eluded everyone inside. Naomi Blake stood at the head of a long table scattered with laptops, half-empty coffee cups, and folders filled with documents. The team looked worn but alert. Jordan Maxwell's calm presence anchored them. "The media storm is building," Naomi said, scrolling through live feeds. "News outlets are picking up Caleb's video faster than Hawthorne's people can spin it. But the smear campaign is already underway. They're painting Caleb as unreliable, dragging out his father's arrest. Headlines read, 'Intern Fabricate's story for attention.'" Caleb buried his face in his hands. "They're destroying my family for telling the truth." Jordan placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Caleb, this is what they do when they're desperate. But we'll turn it around. Truth doesn't vanish just because they throw dirt on it." Delgado, weary but resolute, added, "I've seen Hawthorne run this playbook before. They crushed the little guy to protect the brand, but now the brand itself is rotting." Naomi nodded. "That's why we go public with the documents today. Not to drip everything. Expose the bias, the fraud, the offshore accounts. Hit them so hard they can't recover." Jordan thought carefully before answering. "Not yet. If we dump it all, Hawthorne will claim forgery and spin chaos. We need leverage-time releases. Each wave should corner him tighter until there's nowhere left to run. The room went silent. Everyone could feel the strategy taking shape. This wasn't just defense. It was war. Meanwhile, in his skyscraper office, Richard Hawthorne adjusted his tie and rehearsed his press statement. Cameras and microphones lined the room, his PR team whispering last-minute instructions. Remember, one aide said, Project Confidence. Frame this as a misunderstanding by a gate agent acting independently. Express regret, but don't admit fault. And whatever you do, never say Jordan Maxwell's name. Hawthorne smirked. Of course. This isn't about him. It's about preserving Regalis Airways. Victor Kane leaned against the wall, silent but watchful. He knew Hawthorne's arrogance was both weapon and weakness. The fixer's phone buzzed a message from one of his operatives. Naomi Blake assembling team. Files moving. Delgado compromised. Kane slid the phone back into his pocket and finally spoke. Your biggest problem isn't the press. It's Maxwell. He's not the type to vanish quietly. If you don't neutralize him soon, this could unravel everything. Hawthorne waved dismissively. He's a tech executive, not a warrior. I'll crush him the way I've crushed every obstacle in my career. Yet Kane's instincts prickled. He had studied Jordan Maxwell's rise, his methodical patience, his refusal to be baited, his habit of planning 10 moves ahead. This wasn't going to be a simple takedown. At noon, Hawthorne stepped in front of the cameras. He delivered his statement smoothly, regret without responsibility, empathy without accountability. His words sounded polished, but his eyes carried disdain. Yet within minutes of airing, the cracks appeared. Reporters received anonymous leaks emails signed by Hawthorne himself, instructing managers to flag high-risk profiles, code for passengers of color. Screenshots spread across social media with hashtags like boarding while black and Regalis exposed. By the time Hawthorne returned to his office, his phone was vibrating nonstop. Stock prices dipped 5% in 2 hours. Major investors demanded answers. Back at the safe house, Naomi closed her laptop with satisfaction. First wave landed. The timing was perfect. Caleb looked stunned. That was you. Naomi offered a faint smile. We simply helped the truth find its way out. Jordan raised a hand. This is only the beginning. Hawthorne will lash out harder now. Expect intimidation, maybe worse. We stay focused, disciplined. Every attack he makes only proves our point. Delgado sighed, his conscience heavy. I know how far he'll go. I've seen him ruin families. You all need to understand, he doesn't fight fair. Jordan's voice carried quiet steel. Neither do we, but we fight right. That night, Caleb scrolled through his phone, torn between relief and dread. The supportive messages lifted him, strangers calling him brave, people sharing their own experiences of humiliation at airports, but threats also poured in. Anonymous numbers sent warnings. Delete the video or regret it. He showed one to Naomi. She studied it, then said, This is Kane's style. He wants fear to do the work for him. Don't give him that satisfaction. Caleb nodded, though his hand still trembled. Elsewhere, Hawthorne and Kane met behind closed doors. Hawthorne's rage boiled. How the hell did those emails leak? Who's feeding them? Kane's gaze was cold. Someone close. Delgado, perhaps, or another ghost from your past. You've left too many enemies alive. Richard, and Maxwell knows how to find them. Hawthorne clenched his fists. Then end it. End him. I don't care how. Kane's silence was more chilling than words. He was already calculating options: surveillance, infiltration, a staged scandal that could bury Jordan under manufactured disgrace. But Jordan was ready. He met privately with Evelyn Monroe at a quiet cafe far from the cameras. The mentor listened intently as he laid out Naomi's phase strategy. Evelyn smiled faintly. "You've learned well. You don't swing wildly. You tighten the noose one knot at a time. But be warned, Jordan, Hawthorne won't just fight back. He'll try to drag you into the mud. Don't let him. Keep your dignity. That's your shield." Jordan nodded. "Dignity is non-negotiable." As they parted, Evelyn placed a hand on his arm. "Then remember, this history doesn't change when the powerful apologize. It changes when someone refuses to bow." The words settled deep in Jordan's chest, fueling the quiet fire already burning there. Later that night, Naomi gathered the team again. Phase 2 starts tomorrow. Safety violations, fraudulent maintenance records, payments to offshore shells. By the time we're done, the world won't just see racism, they'll see criminal rot. Caleb looked at Jordan. "And what about me? Am I just supposed to sit here while they drag my family's name through the mud?" Jordan's gaze was steady. "You tell your story, Caleb. You tell it honestly, with every scar and every truth. People will see through their lies because truth carries its own weight. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be real." Caleb swallowed hard, but for the first time, he believed it, and somewhere high above the city. Richard Hawthorne poured another drink, unaware that the empire he had built on arrogance and silence was already crumbling thread by thread, truth by truth, until there would be nothing left to protect him. The morning headlines cut sharper than any blade. Regalis Airways, accused of racial profiling. Whistleblower reveals fraudulent maintenance records. And most damning emails. Link CEO Richard Hawthorne to discriminatory directives. Jordan Maxwell read them silently in the safehouse kitchen, a cup of black coffee cooling in his hand. He could almost hear Hawthorne's fury echoing across the city. Every headline was another brick falling out of Regalis's foundation. But Jordan knew the collapse wasn't complete yet, not until the truth was undeniable. Naomi Blake entered, tablet in hand. Stock is down another 12% in pre-market trading. Investors are panicking. Issue unions are calling for Hawthorne's resignation. But she hesitated. Jordan raised an eyebrow. But what Naomi handed him the tablet. On the screen was a breaking report. Anonymous sources allege Jordan Maxwell under federal investigation for tax fraud. Caleb, sitting nearby, gasped. "They're going after you now." Jordan skimmed the article. It was full of half-truths, twisted numbers, and insinuations that had no basis. Yet the damage was immediate. Social media split in two, some calling him a hero, others branding him corrupt. Delgado cursed under his breath. "That's Kane's work. Smear and distract." Seen it 100 times. Naomi clenched her jaw. "We expected this, but it won't stick. We'll counter with documentation. We'll show every audit, every cleared investigation. Transparency is our weapon." Jordan set the tablet down calmly. Let them throw mud. Mud dries. Truth endures. Even as he said it, a flicker of doubt pressed in. He thought of his employees, his shareholders, his family name. Could one false narrative undo everything he'd built? He shook the thought away. Doubt was exactly what Hawthorne wanted. Across the city, Richard Hawthorne stormed through Regalis headquarters like a general rallying troops in a losing war. His executives looked pale, their eyes glued to tumbling stock charts. "This is temporary," Hawthorne barked. "Maxwell is smoke. We're steel. Steel doesn't bend." Victor Kane, ever composed, whispered something to him. Hawthorne's eyes narrowed. You're sure? Kane nodded. Tonight. We'll take him off the board permanently. Figuratively or literally, if it comes to that. That afternoon, Jordan held a private meeting with Evelyn Monroe in a quiet church near downtown. The old pews creaked as she sat across from him, her silver hair catching the dim light. They'll try to ruin you. Jordan, she said softly. Not just your name, your spirit. Don't let them. Jordan exhaled. How did you endure it, Evelyn? All those years on the board, all the slights and closed doors. Her eyes glistened with memory, by remembering that dignity is mine to guard. They can't strip it from me unless I hand it over, and by never forgetting the faces of those who came after. I fought so they would face fewer walls than I did. Now it's your turn. Fight, but don't lose yourself. Her words steadied him. He left the church with renewed resolve. Meanwhile, Caleb wrestled with his own fears. His mother had called, crying. Strangers had shown up at their doorstep with cameras. His father, still haunted by old scars, warned him to step back. But Caleb couldn't. He remembered Jordan's calm voice at the gate, refusing to bow. He remembered the comments from strangers saying, "This happened to me too." For the first time, Caleb felt his life had purpose beyond himself. That night, Naomi gathered the team. We've traced the payments, offshore accounts tied to shell corporations. Hawthorne funneled millions out of the company. We release this tomorrow morning. It'll hit harder than anything yet. Delgado's voice was low. Be careful. Hawthorne won't take another blow lying down. He's cornered, and a cornered animal is dangerous. As if on cue. The safe house lights flickered. Caleb jumped. Naomi's team scrambled, scanning the feeds. We're being watched, one technician muttered. External surveillance compromised. Jordan stood tall, unshaken. So let them watch. Tomorrow, the whole world will see. But even as he spoke, Naomi slipped him a small note under the table. It read, Kane is closing in. Be ready for anything. At midnight, while the others worked, Jordan stepped onto the balcony for fresh air. The city stretched before him, glittering and restless. He thought of his parents again, how his father once told him, Son, life will test you most when you least expect it. That's when you show who you are. He whispered into the night, as if to them, I won't fail. Inside, Naomi finalized the press release. Delgado reviewed maintenance records one last time. Caleb uploaded backup copies of the files to encrypted servers. Every person in the room knew tomorrow could change everything. And in a dark alley across town, Victor Kane lit a cigarette and dialed a number. Phase 3 begins at dawn, he said. His shadow stretched long against the wall, a reminder that the storm was far from over. The next morning began with a silence that felt almost deliberate, as if the city itself held its breath. Jordan Maxwell sat in front of a wide screen, Naomi Blake and Robert Delgado flanking him. Caleb Turner hovered nervously behind, clutching his ever-present phone. They were waiting for the first wave of scheduled releases Naomi had orchestrated overnight. At exactly 8:30 a.m., the documents went live maintenance cover-ups, fraudulent certifications, photos of aircraft parts marked defective yet still installed on planes. Within minutes, the files spread across networks of journalists, watchdog groups, and ordinary citizens hungry for truth. Hashtags ignited. Meme unsafe skies and Regalis fraud joined the already viral boarding while black. Caleb's phone vibrated nonstop. It's everywhere, he whispered, awe mixing with fear. CNN, New York Times, even international outlets are picking it up. Naomi crossed her arms. Good. Let them see the full picture. Racism is only one head of the beast. Corruption is the body. Delgado, staring at the screen, muttered, I signed off on some of those inspections. I thought they were genuine. Hawthorne had us all blind. Jordan turned to him, voice steady. You did what you could within the system. Now you're doing what matters outside it. Across town, Richard Hawthorne slammed his fist onto a mahogany desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Victor Kane stood nearby, reading updates from his encrypted tablet. This is catastrophic. Hawthorne snarled. They're dragging the whole company into the mud. Do you understand what this does to our investors? Kane's tone was ice. Investors are replaceable. Power is not. The problem isn't the leaks, it's that Maxwell has turned himself into a symbol. As long as he stands, every blow we take becomes his victory. Hawthorne's jaw tightened. Then break him. Kane's expression didn't change, but his mind was already in motion. Operation Mirror, he said finally. If the world wants to see him as a hero, we'll show them a monster instead. By noon, articles began surfacing, accusing Jordan Maxwell of exploiting overseas labor in his tech factories. Old photos, heavily doctored, depicted children in warehouses. Anonymous sources claimed insider knowledge of financial impropriety. Caleb slammed his phone onto the table. They're framing you now. People are sharing these fake stories like they're gospel. Naomi examined the files, her eyes narrowing. Kane's fingerprints, fabricated data stitched onto real documents, enough to look plausible to the casual reader. Jordan's voice cut through the tension. Then we answer with transparency. Release our internal audits. Invite independent inspectors into every facility. If they want to play mirror, we'll shine a brighter light. Delgado leaned forward, brows furrowed. That's risky. Full access means they'll dig through everything, every minor mistake, every flaw. Good, Jordan said. Let them see our flaws. Integrity isn't about perfection. It's about nothing to hide. For a long moment, the room was quiet. The weight of his words sinking in, Caleb felt something stir in his chest, admiration, and a realization that truth could be louder than fear. Meanwhile, Evelyn Monroe watched events unfold from her modest apartment, sipping tea as the television blared with debates. She saw Hawthorne's spin unravel. She saw Jordan's calm counter, and she smiled sadly. The boy's learning, she murmured, but her eyes darkened with worry. She knew Kane's playbook went far beyond lies. That evening, Jordan appeared live on a major network. He spoke not with outrage, but with clarity, addressing the accusations head-on. Yes, my company has had challenges, like any large organization, but every claim being circulated today is false, fabricated to distract from the real issue: systemic discrimination and corruption within Regalis Airways. I invite independent auditors, NGOs, and journalists to examine every corner of Maxwell Dynamics. We have nothing to hide. Can Regalis say the same? The interview went viral within minutes. Viewers commented not on scandal, but on his composure, his refusal to dodge. His calm dismantling of lies carried more power than any outburst could have. Hawthorne watched the broadcast from his penthouse, rage simmering. Why won't he break? Kane lit another cigarette, eyes cold, because he knows the game better than you think. But don't worry, everyone has a breaking point. Late that night, the safe house buzzed with exhaustion. Naomi reviewed security feeds while Delgado dozed in a chair. Caleb typed furiously, responding to waves of supportive messages from strangers. Jordan stepped outside, seeking quiet. The air smelled of rain. For the first time in days, fatigue weighed heavy on him. He thought of his daughter back home, the bedtime stories he'd missed, the promises he'd made to protect her future. "Am I doing enough?" he whispered into the dark. As if in answer, Naomi joined him, her gaze steady. "You're doing what no one else could. You're making them face themselves in a mirror they can't shatter." Jordan smiled faintly, though his heart still carried the burden. "Then tomorrow, we pull harder." Neither of them saw the shadow watching from across the street, phone in hand, relaying their every move back to Kane. The storm had only begun. The rain came down hard that night, sheets of water pounding against the safe house windows. Inside, the hum of laptops and the low murmur of Naomi Blake's team carried on. But the storm outside seemed to echo the unease in the room. Robert Delgado sat at the table, staring at his untouched coffee. His conscience felt like a weight pressing against his ribs. Every document he'd released was true, but truth alone didn't silence the voice in his head, whispering that danger was circling closer. Caleb Turner leaned against the wall, typing responses to messages pouring in. He had become a symbol in his own right, the young man who dared to film injustice and refused to delete it. Yet his fingers shook as he typed. For every message of support, there were threats darker than the storm outside. He wondered how long he could stand it. Jordan Maxwell walked into the room quietly. He paused, taking in the sight of these people. Naomi, steady and sharp. Delgado, burdened but brave. Caleb, scared but still holding the line. He felt pride, but also guilt. They were in this fight because of him, because a gate agent named Linda Carver had chosen to humiliate him at an airport. Yet deep down, he knew it was bigger than that. This wasn't about him alone. It was about everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. "Tomorrow," Jordan said softly, "we escalate." Naomi looked up. The next set of files. He nodded. Payments routed through shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Direct links to Hawthorne's personal accounts. Once those are public, the walls will close in faster than he can buy his way out. Delgado's brow furrowed. And when he fights back, because he will, he always does. Jordan's voice carried quiet steel. Then we hold our ground, with dignity, miles away, in a dimly lit warehouse converted into an operations hub. Victor Kane stood with two men in dark suits. They reviewed photos, grainy shots of Naomi's team, time-stamped locations near the safe house. Kane tapped the images with a gloved finger. They're moving carefully, almost paranoid. Good. Fear slows them down. One of the men asked, "Do we move tonight?" Kane shook his head. "Not yet. Pressure is more effective than violence until the moment violence is necessary. Let them stew in paranoia. Tomorrow, we cut closer. At dawn." Naomi received an alert. Surveillance drones had captured suspicious movement around the block. Vehicles parked too long. Shadows that didn't belong. "We've been compromised," she told Jordan. "They're watching us." Jordan remained calm. "Then let them. If Kane wants to play shadows, we'll play mirrors. Everything they try, we'll turn back on them." Later that morning, a video leaked online grainy security footage showing Jordan at a bar years earlier, edited to make it appear he was bribing an official. Within minutes, the footage spread across networks, accompanied by headlines, "Maxwell's Past Scandal." Caleb groaned. "They're manufacturing dirt faster than we can clean it up." But Naomi studied the clip carefully. Look at the timestamp. The man they claim is an official wasn't even in the country that year. It's doctored. We can prove it in under an hour. Jordan leaned closer to Caleb. "Do you see lies burn fast? But truth endures. Don't let their noise drown out your purpose." Caleb swallowed hard, nodding. "I won't. By midday, Naomi's team had dismantled the smear, releasing proof of the video's manipulation. Independent journalists confirmed it, and the narrative turned again this time toward Hawthorne's desperation. At Regalis headquarters, Hawthorne threw his phone against the wall, shards scattering across the floor. "Why won't this man break?" he shouted. Victor Kane remained collected, though irritation flickered behind his eyes. "Because you underestimated him. Maxwell doesn't rattle easily. He's not playing defense. He's dismantling you piece by piece." Hawthorne's face reddened. "Then we stop playing subtle. Destroy him." Kane exhaled smoke from a freshly lit cigarette. "Careful. Overreach exposes weakness. Let me handle this my way." That evening, Naomi convened the team. "We can't keep reacting. Tomorrow, we strike hard. A live press conference. Jordan, you lay it out, every fraudulent contract, every discriminatory directive. No leaks, no anonymous drops. You put your face to it." Delgado shifted uneasily. "That paints a target on him bigger than ever." Jordan met his gaze calmly. "The target's been there since the gate. Hiding won't shrink it. Speaking truth might." Naomi nodded. "We'll need maximum security. I'll coordinate with allies. Delgado, you'll stand with us. Caleb, you'll stream it. The world will see it live, raw, unfiltered." Caleb's throat tightened. "And if Kane tries something," Jordan's voice softened, "then we show the world not just their corruption, but their fear." That night, sleep didn't come easily. Caleb stared at the ceiling, replaying Jordan's words. Delgado sat at the window, a pistol resting on the sill, though he hoped never to use it. Naomi moved through the house like a sentinel, checking locks, scanning feeds. Jordan finally found himself alone, staring at a family photo he kept folded in his wallet. His daughter's smile reminded him what was at stake. Not revenge, not ego future. A world where she could board any plane, walk into any room, without being told she didn't belong. He whispered, "For you," and slipped the photo back into his pocket. Outside, unseen in the rain, Kane's men adjusted their lenses, cameras trained on the safe house. The hunter and the hunted, separated only by shadows, and in the silence between thunderclaps, the war for truth prepared to cross into open daylight. Morning arrived heavy with anticipation. The safe house buzzed with a nervous energy that even Naomi Blake's steady hand couldn't fully calm. Jordan Maxwell stood before a mirror, adjusting his tie with deliberate patience. He wasn't dressing for vanity. He was armoring himself with composure. Every camera would search for weakness. Every critic would dissect his tone, his posture, his eyes. Naomi entered the room carrying a folder. Final talking points. But remember, Jordan don't sound rehearsed. Speak like you did at the gate that night plain. Calm, undeniable. Jordan closed the folder without reading. "I'll speak the truth. That's all." Downstairs, Caleb Turner set up the streaming equipment. His hands shook as he adjusted the tripod. This wasn't just another viral clip. This was live. No edits, no safety nets. He thought of the threat still flooding his phone, but he pushed the fear down. If Jordan could stand before the world, so could he. Delgado checked the perimeter, his old instincts sharp despite the fatigue in his bones. He knew Kane's people would be nearby. The question was not if they would strike, but when. By noon, the small rented hall in downtown Dallas was filled beyond capacity. Journalists packed shoulder to shoulder, microphones jutting like a forest of steel stems. Activists, community leaders, and ordinary citizens filled the back rows. The atmosphere was electric, a mixture of skepticism, hope, and tension. Jordan walked onto the stage without fanfare. The room quieted instantly. He stood at the podium, placed both hands on either side, and looked out at the crowd. Cameras clicked in rapid succession. "My name is Jordan Maxwell," he began, voice steady. "Last week, I was denied boarding on a flight despite holding a valid first-class ticket. I was treated not as a customer, not even as a human being, but as a threat because of the color of my skin." Murmurs rippled through the room, but he continued. "That moment was not an isolated mistake. It was a window into a culture that has thrived in silence. A culture where passengers of color are profiled, where safety is compromised for profit, where truth is buried under layers of PR and intimidation." He gestured toward the screen behind him. Naomi tapped her tablet, and the first slides appeared copies of Hawthorne's emails, directives using coded language to target high-risk profiles. Gasps rose from the audience. "These are not opinions," Jordan said firmly. "These are directives from the top." Another slide appeared fraudulent maintenance reports signed under Hawthorne's name. Every passenger who boarded a Regalis plane trusted their lives to this airline, and yet profits came before safety, corruption before integrity, racism before dignity. Caleb's livestream comments scrolled rapidly. "Unbelievable!" Finally, someone speaking out. "This is bigger than one flight." A journalist called out, "Mr. Maxwell, are you saying the CEO himself authorized these actions?" Jordan didn't hesitate. "Yes, Richard Hawthorne bears responsibility, and today I call for his resignation effective immediately." The room erupted in shouts, questions, flashes, but Jordan raised a hand, his calm presence commanding silence. "Let me be clear. This is not about vengeance. This is about accountability, about dignity that should belong to every traveler, every worker, every person. We cannot fix what we refuse to face." At that moment, the lights flickered. For a breathless second, the room went dark. Naomi's hand went to her earpiece. Delgado shifted near the stage, scanning the exits. Then the power returned, but tension lingered like static. Jordan didn't flinch. He leaned closer to the mic. Attempts to silence truth will fail. Attempts to intimidate will fail, because truth does not bow. The hall thundered with applause. Even seasoned journalists looked stirred, their pens moving furiously. But not everyone clapped. At the back, a man in a gray coat slipped out quietly, murmuring into his phone. Across town, Victor Kane listened to the report with a thin smile. "Predictable," Kane said. "The hero speech, the moral high ground. But the higher they climb, the harder they fall." That evening, news networks replayed Jordan's words endlessly. Support surged online. Stock in Regalis plummeted further, and calls for Hawthorne's resignation spread. Yet amidst the groundswell of support came darker currents, fabricated counterclaims, doctored testimonies, whispers seeded by Kane's operatives. Back at the safe house, the team sat in exhausted silence. Caleb scrolled through the comments on his stream, eyes wide. Millions watched it live. Millions. "Jordan, Jordan interrupted gently. "We did this, all of us." Delgado finally spoke, voice thick. "For years, I kept my head down, told myself silence was survival. Today, for the first time, I felt free." Naomi smiled faintly, though her eyes never left the window. "Enjoy that freedom while we can. Hawthorne won't retreat quietly." Jordan looked at each of them, then said, "He doesn't need to retreat quietly. He just needs to retreat." But outside, under the cover of night, vehicles idled with engines low. Shadows moved in alleys, Kane's operation was tightening, ready to shift from whispers to force. The battle had left the shadows of an airport gate and entered the light of a nation's conscience. But the storm was far from over. The morning after the press conference, Jordan Maxwell awoke to the sound of Naomi Blake's voice, low and urgent, on the other side of the safe house door. He sat up, listening. Her words came clipped, controlled, but tense enough to seep through the wood. "They've escalated," she said. "Anonymous leaks, manufactured stories, and now threats against families." When she entered the room, her face was calm, but her eyes betrayed the storm she carried. "Jordan, Kane's pushing back harder. Hawthorne's board hasn't abandoned him yet. They're betting fear will crush you before evidence does." Jordan rubbed his temples. The exhaustion ran deep, but so did his resolve. If fear was going to silence me, it would have happened years ago. "What's the plan?" Naomi spread papers and digital tablets across the table. "Operation Mirror is intact, but we're not dealing with just PR spin anymore. Kane's pulling strings in law enforcement, regulators, even the press. Delgado confirmed some of his old colleagues at Regalis have been bribed into rewriting logs. If they succeed, they'll claim the documents we exposed were forged." Caleb, bleary-eyed but determined, chimed in. "We can counter that. I've been archiving backups from the live stream. Every frame, every timestamp, stored on decentralized servers. If they alter the originals, we still have proof." Delgado leaned against the wall, his hand subconsciously resting near his sidearm. "Proof won't matter if Kane decides to turn this physical. The vehicles last night weren't random. He's probing our defenses." Jordan met his eyes. "Then we don't wait for the storm to hit us. We take the fight to them." That afternoon, they split into roles. Naomi would lead intelligence tracking Kane's operations, intercepting communications. Caleb would manage the media stream, ensuring transparency stayed one step ahead of corporate spin. Delgado would handle security and liaison with allies in law enforcement still willing to stand against Kane's influence. Jordan himself would prepare for the board meeting set for the end of the week, the pivotal moment when shareholders would decide whether Hawthorne stayed or fell. But Kane struck first. A breaking news alert hit every major channel. Jordan Maxwell accused of fraudulent dealings. Anonymous sources claim misuse of corporate funds. The anchor spoke gravely of leaked documents supposedly proving Jordan embezzled millions from his own company. Caleb slammed his laptop shut. "It's fake. Obviously fake." Jordan sat motionless for a moment, the words echoing in his ears. He thought of every sacrifice, every late night building trust with his employees, every speech about integrity, and now one fabricated headline threatened to stain it all. Naomi put a hand on his shoulder. "They're aiming at your credibility. If they destroy that, everything else collapses." Jordan exhaled slowly. "Then we give them what they don't expect. Full transparency. Within hours." Caleb uploaded a complete breakdown of Jordan's financial records, audited and verified by independent firms. He streamed a video of Jordan speaking directly. "I have nothing to hide. My life has been an open book. Ask me anything." The gamble worked. Instead of collapsing, public trust deepened. Viewers flooded the stream with support. Journalists began digging into the anonymous sources and uncovered links back to Kane's network. The smear attempt backfired, further eroding Hawthorne's position. But the counterattack came swiftly. That night, Delgado intercepted chatter. Kane's men were moving on one of their allies, Linda Carver, the gate agent who had dared to testify on Jordan's behalf. They rushed across town, Delgado behind the wheel, Naomi scanning streets for tails. They arrived just as two masked figures tried to force Linda into a van. Delgado and Jordan moved in unison, one disarming, the other pulling Linda free. Naomi called in trusted officers who arrived moments later, arresting the attackers. Shaken, Linda clung to Jordan's arm. They said if I didn't retract my statement, they'd make me disappear. Jordan steadied her. They want silence, because your truth is louder than their lies. You're not alone anymore. That night, as Linda rested safely under protection, Jordan sat alone by the window of the safe house. The city lights blurred against the glass. His thoughts turned inward. He remembered his father, a janitor who worked nights at the airport, scrubbing floors the passengers never thought twice about. His father had told him once, "Son, dignity isn't given by a ticket or a title. It's yours the moment you decide no one can take it away." Now, facing Kane's fury and Hawthorne's empire, Jordan whispered those words to himself. They steadied him like a shield. The next morning brought a twist none of them predicted. Evelyn Monroe, his old mentor, appeared at the safe house unannounced. Her silver hair framed sharp, wise eyes, and her presence filled the room like a lighthouse in fog. "You've rattled them," she said simply. "But rattling isn't enough. You need to dismantle the machine from the inside." Jordan rose to greet her, surprise etched on his face. "Evelyn, why now? Because I've seen enough men like Hawthorne walk away untouched. I refuse to believe it could change. You've made me believe again. So I've brought something." From her bag, she drew a thin drive. 20 years of buried reports, safety violations, discrimination complaints, suppressed settlements, all of it. Naomi took the drive with reverence. This could end Regalis in a single blow. Evelyn shook her head. "Or it could end you, if you don't wield it wisely. The truth is heavy. Carry it wrong, and it breaks you." Jordan looked at the team, Naomi's calculating steadiness, Caleb's burning optimism, Delgado's hard-won loyalty, Linda's frightened courage, and he knew the weight wasn't his alone to bear. He nodded slowly. "We'll carry it together." But even as hope surged, Naomi's encrypted phone buzzed. She read the message, her face tightening. "Kane knows about the drive, and he's moving faster than we expected. We've got 48 hours, maybe less, before he strikes again." The room fell into silence, heavy with the knowledge that the final confrontation was near. Jordan broke it with calm certainty. "Then we use those 48 hours not to run, not to hide, but to prepare. Because when the storm comes, we won't just survive it, we'll end it." The final 48 hours unfurled like a storm front. Every moment bristled with urgency. Every breath carried the weight of what lay ahead. Inside the safe house, maps, laptops, and scribbled notes covered the long oak table. The team huddled close, exhaustion etched in their faces, yet an undeniable fire burned in their eyes. Naomi Blake outlined the strategy, her tone crisp. "Tomorrow night is the board vote. Hawthorne will try to buy time, maybe even manipulate proxy ballots. Kane will make his last play to break us before we reach that room. We need airtight protection and a flawless reveal." Caleb Turner leaned forward, fingers twitching over his keyboard. "I've mirrored Evelyn's files across 3 independent servers. If anything happens to us, the world still gets the truth, but the impact is greatest if you deliver it live." "Jordan," Robert Delgado cracked his knuckles, his body taut like a coiled spring. "I've doubled the security detail. No one gets near this place without me knowing." Jordan Maxwell listened silently, weighing each word. His mind replayed Linda Carver's trembling voice, Evelyn Monroe's grave warning, his father's reminder about dignity. Then he spoke, voice steady. This fight stopped being about one boarding pass the moment they tried to erase us. Tomorrow, we show them dignity cannot be denied. Not mine. Not anyone's. That night, Naomi caught Jordan alone on the balcony. The city hummed in the distance, a restless beast. She studied him for a long moment. "You're calm," she said softly. "I have to be," Jordan replied. "If I break, everything else does too." Naomi's lips pressed into a line. "You carry more than anyone should. Just remember, you're not alone." Jordan met her gaze. "Grateful. I know. That's why I can carry it." The next evening, the board convened in a glittering skyscraper downtown. Polished marble floors reflected the sharp suits and colder faces of shareholders, many of whom whispered nervously about the storm swirling outside. Media vans clustered on the street, their cameras pointed at the building like watchful eyes. Jordan and his team arrived together, flanked by security. Naomi's eyes scanned constantly. Delgado's hand hovered near his jacket. Caleb carried a small device linked to the servers. Evelyn walked beside Jordan, her cane tapping rhythmically, a quiet reminder of both resilience and age. Linda, pale but resolute, followed close behind, her presence proof of ordinary courage. Inside the boardroom, Richard Hawthorne stood at the head of the table, his usual air of superiority now tinged with desperation. Victor Kane lingered near the back, arms folded, his predatory gaze fixed on Jordan. "Mr. Maxwell," Hawthorne sneered, voice dripping with false courtesy. "You've caused quite a spectacle, but this board deals in facts, not theatrics, and the fact remains you've endangered the stability of this company." Jordan didn't sit. He placed Evelyn's drive on the table. "The only thing endangering this company is your corruption, your lies, and your arrogance. Tonight, everyone will see it." Naomi tapped her tablet, and screens around the room lit up. Documents, videos, testimonies spilled forth, safety violations ignored, discrimination complaints buried, bribes exchanged, threats carried out. Each slide was a blade slicing through Hawthorne's defenses. Gasps filled the room. Caleb streamed the entire presentation live. Viewers across the nation watched the once secret boardroom crumble under the weight of truth. Hashtags exploded online. Our justice for Jordan. End Regalist corruption. Dignity or... Hawthorne's face paled. "This is outrageous, fabricated. Do you think this circus will hold up in court?" Evelyn's voice cut through the room, steady as steel. "I wrote those reports. I was silenced when I tried to expose them years ago. Don't you dare call them fabricated." Linda stepped forward, voice trembling but clear. "And I was threatened for speaking out. But I won't be silent anymore." The room shifted. For the first time, Hawthorne seemed small, his bluster shrinking against the tide of courage. But Kane was not finished. He stepped forward, his voice smooth as oil. "This is all very dramatic, but let's not forget public opinion is fickle. Mr. Maxwell may have stirred the mob, but mobs forget. Money endures." He turned to the board. "Stay with Hawthorne, and your profits remain intact. Side with Maxwell, and you gamble everything on sentiment." Jordan faced him squarely. "You call it sentiment. I call it survival. Every passenger, every employee, every family who trusted this airline deserves to live, not gamble their lives on your greed. You talk of money. What price do you put on dignity, on a life lost to a falsified report?" The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Board members shifted uneasily, their eyes darting between Kane's smirk and Jordan's steady gaze. Then, Delgado's phone buzzed. His face hardened. "Jordan," he murmured, "they've sent men. Armed. They're outside." The tension in the room spiked. Naomi immediately coordinated with their security detail. But Jordan didn't flinch. He turned back to the board. "You see, this is their answer to accountability. Intimidation. Violence. If you stand with them, you stand against the very people you claim to serve." Outside, police sirens wailed, converging on the building. The attackers never breached the doors. Naomi's foresight and Delgado's network had tipped off allies in law enforcement, who intercepted Kane's men. The attempted strike only deepened the sense of crisis. The board chair, an older woman named Margaret Sloan, finally spoke. "We've seen enough. It's time to vote." Hands raised, one after another. The tally was decisive. Richard Hawthorne was removed as CEO effective immediately. Kane's influence cracked as shareholders distanced themselves. Evelyn was named interim chair until restructuring could begin. Jordan exhaled slowly, the weight lifting at last. But he didn't smile. Not yet. He turned to Hawthorne. "This isn't just your downfall. It's a warning to every leader who thinks power excuses prejudice. Dignity is not optional. Justice is not negotiable." Security escorted Hawthorne out, his protests echoing down the marble hall. Kane slipped away silently. But Jordan knew this wasn't the last they'd hear of him. Outside, the night air erupted with cheers. Crowds had gathered, watching the live stream on giant screens. When Jordan stepped out, they roared not just for him, but for what he represented. He lifted the microphone one last time. "This victory is not mine alone. It belongs to every person who has ever been told they don't belong, who has been silenced, who has been denied dignity. Tonight, we proved that truth is stronger than fear, and together, we will keep proving it." The crowd's chant rose like thunder. Dignity first, dignity first. Naomi stood beside him, eyes glistening. Caleb's camera shook as he fought to keep filming through tears. Delgado allowed himself the rarest of smiles. Evelyn placed a hand on Jordan's arm, whispering, "You did it." But Jordan only whispered back, "We did." And in that moment, under the glow of city lights and the roar of thousands, the fight that began with one denied boarding pass became something far greater, a movement no one could shut down. The story of Jordan Maxwell is not just about an airline, a boardroom, or even a powerful CEO. It is about dignity, the simple, profound truth that every person deserves respect. Too often in life, people are judged by appearances, titles, or circumstances rather than character. Jordan's fight reminds us that silence allows injustice to thrive. But courage, even in small, steady steps, can dismantle systems that once seemed untouchable. For older generations, who may have endured discrimination quietly, this story holds a reminder: your worth is not determined by how others see you. It is determined by how you choose to stand, speak, and live. We may not all have the influence of a CEO, but we all have choices whether to speak up for a neighbor, defend a colleague, or insist on fairness in daily life. Injustice can be loud, but dignity can be louder when we act together. The lesson is clear: never underestimate the power of truth, and never forget the healing strength of standing firm in who you are. Thank you so much for watching and sharing this journey with us. Your support means everything. If this story touched you, please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that inspire hope, courage, and change. Together, we can keep these conversations alive.